Hey.
That movie didn't have nearly as many twists as Middle School.
No, there were ghosts in this movie though.
As you could tell, this is going to be the fun review.
Look, we got a really checkered past, all right?
Come to America, see its proud history. Oh.
Or just watch Coming to America with Eddie Murphy. So, we just got out of Birth of a Nation.
No, The Birth of a Nation.
The Birth of a Nation.
Two very different movies here.
When I was talking to my girlfriend earlier, she thought we were going to see a re-release of D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. Like, that's true, mate. We're going to be at the theater for like 3.5 hours. That's a long, silent film.
Well, this was a hard sit, and I knew it was going to be a hard sit when I went into this movie, but it was a hard sit for entirely different reasons than I expected, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I might have liked this movie a little better than you did, even though I have problems with it.
Yeah. It's been interesting watching this movie and how it's developed, because the word of mouth building around this movie started all around at Cannes, and you can understand why the word of mouth had built around it, because here is this black filmmaker with his very first film, written, produced, starring, and he's reclaiming the title of a movie that's infamously a propaganda piece for the KKK.
We're taking that title back.
Yeah.
I can't wait till he makes Triumph of the Will.
And telling a story of a historical figure that has been previously been not very well, very well depicted in history. It's been a figure that's been, in many cases, sidelined. Especially, you can tell that especially in the source of in the epilogue that they at the end of the movie, where they note that Nat was
everything that happened to his body,
dismembered and used for grease. All in the hopes of preventing a legacy, and the movie's really trying to prevent that. And here's the thing: I get that with the movie. You can tell it's this really well-intentioned, really
absolutely.
It really wants to be this powerful piece. And of course, the narrative surrounding the movie has been very much changed because of the what has come to light after the movie was bought by Fox Searchlight.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how the movie does. That whole controversy involving Nate Parker and the co-writer of this film. It didn't affect how I watched the movie, because, I mean, look, it's not the first time I've watched and reviewed a movie that's done by a person who's possibly pretty morally reprehensible. And it won't be the last time either. So that... I mean, that didn't bother me going into this movie. That didn't bother me really going into the movie. I mean, I was aware of it, and there is some things with the movie to do with that. But to be honest, that really wasn't shaping my opinion of the movie. I was very much going into this, as it was very much intended to be seen, very much as a movie by itself. If I can objectively review a Victor Salva film, I can sit through Birth of a Nation.
Because my problems with the movie aren't to do with the fact that the guy that made this is an acquitted rapist. That has nothing to do with my qualms with the movie. My qualms with the movie, I think, come down to a lot of the fact that it's a movie that has a first-time director. And last night we watched Girl on the Train and we compared it to Gone Girl. Because the comparison is unavoidable. Here, it's very much unavoidable that you, in your head, you compared this to 12 Years a Slave.
No, you're absolutely right. And during the movie, of course it's not that old of a movie. Visually speaking, they look rather similar. Like, similar tones and everything. Or similar, like, cinematography. Well. Exactly. And 12 Years is... There were times in this movie where... I was thinking to myself that 12 Years a Slave is a better film. It's paced better. It's edited a lot better than this movie.
We have to talk about this movie's pacing.
I knew we were going to agree on this, because this movie is like exactly 2 hours long. Which when I see something that's exactly 2 hours long, I instantly get suspicious that. This has been edited down to get in more show times throughout the day. you can kind of tell in a lot of scenes in this movie.
You can kind of tell that it's a movie that at one point might have been longer, but I think that's also just simply due to the way it's been structured. Because the first act, I had major reservations with the first act of this movie in particular, because, you know, the movie is about this revolution.
Yeah.
But really, it kind of isn't for the most part. For the most part, it ends up being this biopic movie when really it shouldn't be. It really should have more of a focus on the revolution.
Exactly. What would you say? The revolution is maybe 20 minutes of this movie?
It's maybe 20 minutes in the final act of the film.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it's more biopic fodder and really awkwardly paced biopic fodder that at times feels like you're reading the Wikipedia synopsis of a person's page. Because it jumps years in edits.
Yeah.
Because it goes through all the events in Nat's life.
Yeah.
But it happens in such a quick succession, and it sort of goes along for the first 40 minutes of the movie like this.
Yeah.
Because it starts out with him as a kid, and then it transitions into him as a young adult, and then he essentially buys his wife, essentially.
Yeah.
And then it moves into him going into becoming a preacher, and then she says that, well, we're having a kid, and then in the next cut, the kid is maybe about 4 years old at that point.
That kind of pacing, I wasn't so much having a problem with that. I wasn't because, okay, like that, cutting from his wife saying she's pregnant and then she has a kid, like, okay, I know how much time has passed right now because of the fact she's given birth and how old the kid looks. The editing I had a problem with in this movie is, okay, for instance, there's a gun battle in this movie that has no ending. Like, there's a gun battle at night with Jackie Earle and his guys versus Nat Turner and Nat Turner's people.
That bothered me as well.
Thank you. Yeah, like, it just ends. Like, it cuts to I thought it was cutting to a flashback because suddenly there's this gun battle where they're trading bullets, like, two different sides. And then all of a sudden, it's the next day.
Yeah, and suddenly there's thousands of them there. It's really confusing the edited like that.
Yeah, I didn't know if Jackie Earle and his men were dead, and it was gonna pan back, and maybe Jackie Earle and his guys have been hung. Like, no, like, because Jackie Earle shows up in the final battle there at the end, but there is weird editing like that in this film.
It's all the stuff that you mentioned is all in the stuff to do with the revolution, and it makes me think if there was a movie that was properly about this rather than it seeming. I hate to say it seems almost like an afterthought, but it doesn't feel like it's the focus of the movie like it really could have been.
The movie's structured like a revenge film. Yeah, like it is. It's structured like. We spend a majority of the movie seeing all these atrocities that he's witnessing, all the things that are happening to him, to his wife, and then the last act of the movie is like a revenge film. Yeah. That's the last act of the movie. They
rise up and kill their masters.
Yeah.
But the editing in those sequences, it definitely said we ran out of budget.
Kind of. Yeah, because if this movie was, I honestly thought that like the revolution was going to be maybe halfway into this movie, and then it was
I thought
really
going to. I thought that was really going to be the empirical focus of the movie. It really isn't.
No, it's not. Like, and you can get into some really interesting issues there if the movie focused on that a lot more, because and correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I've been in history class, but you really could have gotten deep into the fact that during this uprising there were women and children on both sides that were killed. You really could have gotten into this like moral area between, you know, they've witnessed all this. They're rightfully uprising against these people, rightfully so. Yeah. Like, believe me, like when he gets his revenge on Jackie Earle, it's like you know, like when the guy gets his head chopped off and stuff like that. But you really could have sunk your teeth into this material and really showed some pretty dark shit.
It feels like there wasn't nearly enough time devoted to the actual revolution at the end of the movie, because, like you said, there's a lot of things that are historically known that are very much either glanced over or completely omitted, and it's both a problem for the movie in the fact that again, it doesn't feel like it has nearly enough depth in that particular section, but also because it kind of lets Nat off the hook a little bit when there could have been a lot more sort of interesting dialogue about the sort of ethics of this, because it's clearly part of this is clearly a religiously based revolution. It's clearly, he's seen in what religion can do, how religion can both empower people, but also can be used to keep people in bondage, essentially. And he tries to use essentially religion, their weapon of. They use religion as a kind of weapon in a certain sense.
Because he says, "I am wrath."
Yeah. Just like John Travolta.
Exactly. That's the better Nat Turner movie.
Yeah. but he turns that essentially against the slave owners. And here's the thing that I had with this movie is that it's clearly from a first-time director.
You really feel the auteurism in this film.
Absolutely. This is the kind of movie where you can tell that it has a sense of its own self-importance.
Yeah.
And it doesn't benefit the movie because it makes it feels slightly sanctimonious in some areas, but it just...
You mean like when he sees an angel at the end of the film?
The symbolism in this movie.
I took you to the best possible movie to see why you're here.
This is the symbolism.
If you had stood up and shouted that in the middle of this film...
Oh man, the thought had crossed my mind. Because this was symbolism 101, and at times it was almost a little bit embarrassing because it was weird cutaway shots that had nothing to do virtually with the scenes that they were in.
Not at all. It got weird. Like, not only is it really stereotypically auteurish, but it was like, did someone sit on the remote and I'm watching an episode of Hannibal all of a sudden?
It's like that first scene in Lucy where it cuts to stock nature footage.
Yeah, exactly. Like
his wife gets attacked and the scene's playing out, and then suddenly we cut to this insert shot of corn bleeding.
This ear of corn that's bleeding, and there's one part where Nat Turner standing with kid Nat Turner, and he's doused in like this white war paint.
It's connected to the sort of tribalism that was at the start of the movie. But again, it's something that doesn't feel like it has a place in the movie as
it looks like he's avoiding Emperor Palpatine hiding in the woods, like because this big dark cloaked figure turns his head around.
The very first instance of symbolism, I'm really annoyed because I can't remember off the top of my head, but it really annoyed me because it felt so jarring, and then it kept happening.
Quite a bit.
The visions of his wife as an angel that happened when he was getting whipped, and then it happens again at the end of the movie when he's getting hung, and
the movie could lose all of that.
Hanged, quite pedantic.
Someone paused the video to type that in there.
You hung a picture on. You hang a person.
I say hanged all the time.
Yeah.
Or hung, or whichever one is the wrong one. I say.
Don't worry. I'm sure someone will correct us.
Oh, they do. And I'm always like, dude, wonder what I meant.
But the moment where he kills Armie Hammer in the movie, again, that is a real kind of symbolism moment because they're backlit against this giant stained glass cross, and again it really takes away some of the ethics of that particular moment because the framing of the cross in that moment makes it look like a very righteous kind of thing when really Armie Hammer's character was more of an ambiguous figure because he starts off sort of...
Armie Hammer has the best arc in this movie. Yeah. By far.
Armie Hammer is the kind of actor that he really is more of a character actor than he is a leading man.
I really like Armie Hammer.
Yeah, he's a good actor, but I'm not sure if he's leading man material. But this is the kind of role that he's.
He's great. I loved him in Man from U.N.C.L.E. As bad as Lone Ranger was, like I had no problem with him. Yeah. Like honestly, as the Lone Ranger, he's actually kind of a perfect actor to play that. But in this, he really starts out this movie as this more not a terrible person by any means. Like, it starts out like there's almost this sort of friendship between the two of them. Like, he kind of protects Nate Parker a bit early on in the movie, and it seems like they bond a bit, almost sort of like the Cumberbatch role in 12 Years a Slave.
Yeah, that definitely reminded me of that.
Yeah. And Armie Hammer has the best arc in this film, because as the movie goes on, Armie Hammer himself starts seeing more and more of this sadistic, torturous shit, like the guy getting his teeth knocked out, and you can tell Armie Hammer's having a huge problem watching this. Like, he's disturbed by it, he starts drinking, and then as the movie goes on,
he sort of ends up morphing into his father more.
Yeah, he starts turning into his father. He becomes much more of a hardcore alcoholic.
Abusive.
Really abusive.
Turning a blind eye to everything.
Yeah, because he starts having, like, problems on his farm, and so it's really interesting starts
calling Nat by boy.
Yeah. It was really... That was honestly the most compelling character in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, it really was, to see what started out as this figure that you don't dislike in the film to, by the end, really not that much different than the rest of the people that they're rising up against. That, to me, was one of the things I really liked about this movie. It's why it's one of the things that I didn't... Whereas overall, I didn't dislike this movie. Armie Hammer
I didn't dislike this movie either. I want to make this perfectly clear. I don't think this is a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination.
No, not at all.
This is a very flawed movie,
yeah.
And I have serious problems with the way that it's executed. But I am sympathetic to what it's trying to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. No, totally. And good things I could say about the movie is that other than Armie Hammer being really fucking good in this,
Nate Parker in the lead role, he's very solid in
all around. The acting is really solid in this movie. Nate Parker is really good in this film. He is a good leading man in the flick.
The journey that his character takes is interesting in and of itself. There's sort of this idea that he goes around to these various slave houses. Yeah. And he preaches, because he's probably luckier than many of the people that he encounters, in that he has had a semblance of an education.
He can read.
Yeah, he can read. He doesn't he go to one of them and they say, oh, they barely even know their own names.
Yeah, they barely know how to spell their own names, or barely know their names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even when he's being taught by Penelope, I think that's Penelope Ann Miller at the beginning of the movie. I think it is. I seem to recall she was in this movie.
Yeah.
Even then, there is still a feeling of segregation and separation. Like, these are all the books for the white people, but here's your Bible.
Yeah.
But he goes around preaching, and he sees firsthand the conditions, and you can see him visibly uncomfortable. You can see how there is a serious conflict in how he feels in his own Christianity, and how other people use Christianity as a justification for their own sort of barbaric actions.
Oh, it never happens nowadays.
Yeah.
The movie does.
The movie's not timely whatsoever.
No. Yeah, the movie does do a lot of that, where without outright coming out and saying it, it compares a lot of the things in the movie.
I mean, we compare this to 12 Years a Slave, but it's sort of different in some respects, in that 12 Years a Slave has a sort of element of Hitchcockian wrong man kind of narrative, in that Solomon Northup... Whoa, that was very close to us, guy behind us. Just run right into us.
That would be something. It's Irving and Brian yelling at me because they're not seeing this movie.
But it's very interesting that because 12 Years a Slave is a different kind of movie in that unlike Nat in this movie, he had he was a respected violinist, he was a freed slave, he'd managed to get himself out of that, and then of course he'd been put into that, so there was All right. There was a greater feeling of there was a palpable sense of injustice coursing through that movie. Very obviously, it's a
12 Years a Slave. Yeah, also watching it, I think had a bit more hope to it than watching this. Like this is gonna end gruesome.
As soon as you see Jackie O'Haley as a slave capturer, you know that's not going to end
exactly. Well. Look, that was their mistake right there. You hire Jackie Earle as your slave master. Of course it's going to end in an uprising. That was their big mistake back then.
But the difference between the two movies is that the atrocities in 12 Years a Slave, they really linger on them. They really make you feel the impact on them. Here, the difference I feel in the sort of way the film is executed is that it almost makes you feel that those things, coming from Nat's perspective as someone who's been raised in that world, his father leaves very early on because he shoots one of the people and he never comes back again.
He doesn't. I'm sure he's fine.
Yeah. Having been born and raised into this world and having seen it firsthand, there is a sense of it being very common, of it being almost par for the course in some sense, and it's much more impressionistic in the same way, in a different way that 12 Years a Slave was, in that Solomon Northup was an outsider, whereas Nat in this movie definitely isn't. But even then, he's still shocked by what he sees.
Because even living where he lived, he didn't see someone with a metal gag over his mouth getting force-fed through a tunnel and his teeth plucked out.
And knocked out with a hammer.
And what I liked about this is how much this movie really does, like you were mentioning, 12 Years a Slave, kind of showcasing a lot of the violence and everything. And this one, I did like how a lot of the really violent material in this really kind of lingered more on the shots of the characters who were watching it happen right in front of them.
Yeah, it was very much more impressionistic. The actual sort of gory moments are actually very fleeting, if anything.
Yeah, there's the teeth, there's the whipping scene, there's the climax.
Yeah, but the difference in the whipping scene, for example, in 12 Years a Slave, they showed the whipping scene from the perspective of
that really fucking hurts.
Yeah. They show the back being ripped apart in 12 Years a Slave, whereas it's very much more on Nat struggling through that ordeal.
It is. It's more him. It's more his face and him kind of remaining strong and vigilant through this. Whereas 12 Years a Slave, you're right. It's an outsider involved in this, so he's reacting as you realistically would when getting hit in the back with a freaking whip.
Yeah. But this comes down to maybe I just didn't feel it in the same way, because like I said, 12 Years a Slave, that sense of indignity and injustice courses throughout the entire movie, and it does here, but it almost feels to a lesser extent. There are too many structures in this movie that feel like they're a little bit meandering. Like you said, there are serious pacing issues with this movie.
Yeah.
This is the kind of movie where it really, you compare it to a revenge movie. In a revenge movie, there is normally a sense of sort of anger bubbling up to the surface, and unfortunately, Nate Parker, in terms of his direction, he's a better actor than he is a director.
Well, because
he doesn't really get a building sense of tension in the movie.
Well, he does, but the thing is, and it's a problem I have with some of the pacing is that it does reach a point to where it bubbles up to where this guy's going to snap and he's going to kill these people.
Yeah.
But an unfortunate thing this movie does is it does get repetitive.
Yeah.
Because it sort of reaches a point in the movie where I thought the revolution was going to start, or it was going to happen around when his wife is raped. But it keeps going, and then there's another bad thing that happens, and then we see another shot of Nate Parker reacting to this, and then you're like, okay, is it going to start here at this dinner party? It doesn't.
You find yourself restlessly kind of waiting for the revolution to happen, because
you really do.
You're familiar with this part of the story, and I have to be honest, like I said, I found this a really kind of stodgy watch, and there were parts of this where I was bored, to be honest.
I don't think I was ever bored, but I was restless.
I didn't feel wholly invested in the story in the same way that I did with 12 Years a Slave.
Same here.
12 Years a Slave, you know, it really kept me engrossed in the action, and this movie doesn't do that. That is the fundamental difference between the two movies, to be honest. And going back to the controversy, I can understand why there is some controversy, because when it comes to the female characters in this movie, again, a lot of them are there to be abused. Like, for example, I mean that makes sense in the time period. But for example, Nat's wife, who, you know, we know that bad things are going to happen to her.
Yeah.
And Jackie Earle corners her, and he beats her, and it's pretty heavily implied that he rapes her.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously, with the controversy, having that happen is, you know, a bit of a problem, especially considering that, historically speaking, I'm not sure that she actually was raped. I think that was something that was invented for the film.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I remember reading that might have been an invention for the film. But the thing is, even with that, even if I'm wrong on that, that character is almost out of the rest of the movie. And that happens around 50 minutes in. She's in it a couple of scenes after that, but most of the time she's lying in bed recuperating.
You raise a good point there, because there was a part in the movie where she had been out of it so long I didn't know she died.
Yeah.
There was, like, so I had issues with that. I don't have any issues with there being a lot of abuse in this film.
Yeah, it's not the idea of abuse. It's more just sort of to do with that kind of character. It didn't feel like she was very fleshed out as a particular character. It just...
I agree with that. Yeah. I do. I mean, but I don't know how... Like I said, I don't know how accurate that is. I don't know if that person existed or if this happened to that person. It was more, to me, the problems I had there was, like I said, like I was never really bored in this film. I was always at the least, I was gripped by the acting, even some of the cinematography.
Yeah.
But in terms of that, I was getting restless.
Yeah.
Especially when it reached a point where it was sort of repetitive. Like, how many more things are going to happen until it gets to the uprising? That being one of them. That honestly was what I thought was going to start the whole thing.
It feels like a movie that should be more incendiary than it really comes across on screen to some extent. It feels like a movie... Because there are things that are really charged about it, but it just something about it just didn't really click with me. It's just one of those movies where you can tell it's an important movie. You can tell it's something that the people involved in it were really passionate about, but it just didn't connect with me, and it just didn't. It felt like there was a better movie really struggling to come out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that if this movie went through another edit, like maybe lose some of the auteur symbolism,
lose the symbolism, tighten up the first act, make it more focused on the
first and second act, focus a lot more on that, get into some moral ethics and things that could be
this need a rewrite and a re-edit.
At least a re-edit. Like, you know what? Maybe not necessarily a rewrite, but at least a re-edit, because I can see to where there's enough great stuff on screen here that another tighter edit, maybe extending the revolution a bit more if they can, if there was enough. If there was enough.
Like I said, this seemed like a movie where they had a very low budget, and perhaps the way they had to deal with that was that they had to truncate that portion of the movie, but they really should have just extended that portion of the movie out, because it's exactly what you came to see. It's exactly what the audience comes to see.
Yeah, it's the poster of the film.
Yeah,
it's the poster, and like. It's such a small part of the movie that it feels like this only took place within a few hours.
Yeah,
like
it really does. When it comes up in the epilogue saying that it's a 48-hour, it was a 48-hour siege, that really doesn't come across in the film.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. Yeah, no. I would say that it's at the least. I would say it's worth a matinee screening.
Yeah, this is probably a matinee or a rental at the very least. I would like to reiterate, this isn't a movie that I hated by any stretch of the imagination. it's a movie that I could get behind to some extent, but
Yeah.
there are too many reservations for me here to give this a wholehearted recommendation. I think it's a movie that's probably worth seeing if you're interested in, especially if you're a film fan. I think it's definitely a movie that people are going to be talking about for the next several months, especially in the run up to the Oscars, especially because this movie is bound to score a couple of nominations, and that's that is going to stir quite a few people up.
Yeah. You know what it sort of feels like? You ever see Top 5 with Chris Rock?
I didn't get round to it, unfortunately.
It's actually a really good movie.
Yeah.
But there's a movie that his character is making in the movie that he's promoting that's like his character's first dramatic break.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's called Uprising. And it's... Well, they just switched out Chris Rock for Nate Parker.
Well, it turns out we're living in the reality of Top 5 because that's how Boo a Medea Halloween happened.
That was, because Boo a Medea Halloween, which in Top 5 was called, like, Medea's Haunted House, is the movie that was, like, beating Chris Rock's movie at the box office in that film. And the tagline was, like, she ain't afraid of no ghosts.
And apparently the story behind that is that Lionsgate saw Top 5 and went to Tyler Perry, hey, how come you didn't do a Halloween Medea movie? Here's some money, let's do that.
Yeah. I guess my final thought on this is, man, the 1800s seem like a real headache.
History sucks.
Right? The movie is, I think 12 Years a Slave is a better movie.
Yeah.
For the reasons we said.
Yeah.
But I was gripped enough by this film to where I wasn't sitting there like, I certainly didn't regret seeing it. At the least, it's worth a matinee. But if you don't see it in theaters, like, I don't know if you're really missing much of a theatrical experience going to see this thing. But I mean, like, if I paid matinee prices to go see this in the theater, I'd have been perfectly satisfied. I mean, I do feel satisfied.
Yeah. I think this is a perfectly solid, well-intentioned, but just very flawed movie, unfortunately. And the thing is, we got all the trailers for a lot of them, and there was a lot of movies that are very similar to this. And I imagine that at least one of those movies will be better than this one. I think
Get Out with directed by Jordan Peele.
That trailer, man, that's talk about. I'd not seen that trailer before, but so that really, I didn't know what turns that trailer was making. That started off with something completely different.
That's the Stepford Wives that they decided to start making black people instead.
I was more thinking along the lines of Loving with Ruth Negga and Joel Edgerton and Michael Shannon. That looks like it might actually be a stronger movie than this one, and might actually take a little bit of the attention away from this one if it's released correctly.
We got a few like Oscar season trailers.
That one with Denzel Washington being released at
Fences.
Christmas.
That looks good.
Yeah, it looks good, but it looks like it's going to be the most depressing Christmas movie of all time.
You say that, but we get a lot of like ass movies released on Christmas here.
Wasn't Django Unchained released at Christmas?
That was that. I think so. I think
in
that
the
was
US anyway.
A lot of Tarantino's are actually like Hateful Eight was out around Christmas last year. But we got
Hidden Figures.
We also got Hidden Figure, the Affleck movie that looks really good. Live by Night.
Inferno, the US trailer for Inferno that apparently US audiences don't like to see a movie these days unless they have 2/3 of the movie spoiled in exact order.
Inferno does that. Keeping Up with the Joneses does that. Honestly, it looks like Get Out does that.
Yeah, because those are different trailers than the ones that I've seen in the UK. The international trailers do not spoil the movie in the exact order that it happens.
American trailers suck. They do that all the fucking time. Like Inferno is one of the biggest fucking wants to do that.
We did that last night because we got the Inferno trailer before Go on the Train, and I almost don't have to go and see that movie when I
Terminator Genesis. I remember that notoriously did that last. I mean, not that whatever. That was a bad movie anyway.
I imagine the Birth of a Nation trailer does that by dint of it being a historical story.
I mean, it does show the uprising in the trailer. Jackie Kennedy movie looked really good.
Yeah, that looked like a really interesting movie.
Yeah.
Especially since they went out their way to make it look like a movie that had been shot in the 60s.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that trailer before. That looked really fucking good. So yeah, we got a bunch of the awards season movies at the beginning of this, and Get Out.
What do you mean, Inferno's not going to win an Oscar next year?
Maybe for sound. I doubt even that. Is it time to go see Masterminds?
It is 7:10.
All right. We gotta go.
Yeah, this movie, I think final thoughts, it's okay. I think
it's fine.
It's a big, important movie, but I'm not sure if that necessarily is the same thing as good.
A review you could say about the original Birth of a Nation, honestly.
It turns out movies called Birth of a Nation are cursed.
Yeah. All right, Fall of a Nation, too. That was the sequel to the original. That's a lost film.
Probably for the best.
We're gonna go see last week's runaway hit, Masterminds.
The other true story movie.
Yeah, it is a double feature. See ya.
Take care.